Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, January 14, 2026. Senate Republicans successfully block a War Powers resolution on Venezuela after 2 of the 5 Republicans who voted to advance the resolution last week switched their votes. Foreign ministers of Greenland and Denmark meet in Washington with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio about President Donald Trump's stated goal of the U.S. controlling Greenland. The Danish Foreign Minister saying fundamental disagreement remains, but conversations will continue. President Trump says he's heard it on good authority that the killing in Iran is stopping, and there are no plans for executions. There has been a severe crackdown on protesters in Iran, with thousands reported already killed in the streets. Iran had announced that suspects arrested would have fast trials and executions. Articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem over the Trump administration's immigration policies get support from more than 50 House Democrats. President Trump signs a bill into law to return whole and 2% milk to school lunchrooms. A House committee approves a bill to tighten restrictions on stock trading by members of Congress. And Hillary Clinton, as expected, did not comply with a subpoena to testify in a House committee investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, and, as expected, the Republican chair James Comer saying the committee will vote to hold her, as well as former President Bill Clinton, who did not show up yesterday, in criminal contempt. Axios reporting Senate Republicans successfully thwarted a final vote Wednesday on a War Powers resolution seeking to restrict future military action in Venezuela. It's a big win for President Trump and Senate Republican leaders who mounted a last-minute pressure campaign to avoid another rebuke of the administration's actions in Venezuela. The procedural vote passed 51-50, with Republican Senators Rand Paul of Kentucky, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Susan Collins of Maine voting against it with Democrats. Vice President Vance cast the tie-breaking vote. It came down to Senators Josh Hawley of Missouri and Todd Young of Indiana, who ultimately decided to support the procedural move to block the vote, despite voting in favor of the resolution last week. That was from Axios. Senator Jim Risch, Republican from Idaho, chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, spoke on the Senate floor before the vote.
I understand many of the sentiments people have about war powers and the balance between Congress and the president. There is truly clear tension between the branches in the Constitution on this matter. And of course, that has reared its head many, many times during the existence of our country. Putting U.S. troops in hostility is an incredibly serious matter. These are American lives on the line, and we should not expose them to danger unless there are vital national interests, and of course, we should not ask them to engage in endless wars. We're not debating those issues here today. What we are debating is trying to stop something that is not happening. Let me say that again. The objective of this resolution is to stop something that is not happening.
Senator Jim Risch, Republican from Idaho, chair of the Foreign Relations Committee. The Republican sponsor of the War Powers Act resolution on Venezuela was Rand Paul of Kentucky. He also spoke before the vote.
Now we have a situation in Venezuela where hundreds of troops were sent in, dozens and dozens of pilots and planes were sent in. You bombed a nation's capital. You had extraordinary rendition of the nation's president. And now we have a blockade involving hundreds of ships and thousands of sailors. But that's not a war. So it's somewhat boggling to the mind that almost every Republican senator believed there was a war when a few soldiers were shot at in Gaza trying to build a pier. I agreed with them. I think that was putting U.S. troops into war. But now every Republican, not every Republican, virtually all the Republican senators who believed that it was a war in Gaza now believe it's not a war in Venezuela.
Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, on the Senate floor before the Senate voted 51-50 to block the resolution, with Vice President J.D. Vance breaking the tie. Through that procedural motion, the Senate deciding that the resolution is not privileged because, as you heard argued, there are no U.S. troops currently in Venezuela. The two crucial Republican senators that flipped the vote from last week, Josh Hawley of Missouri and Todd Young of Indiana, Axios writing that Young was promised that Secretary of State Marco Rubio would appear before the Foreign Relations Committee in a public hearing after next week's recess, and assured that the administration will come to Congress first if U.S. military forces are needed in Venezuela. From ABC News, the FBI conducted a search of a Washington Post reporter's home Wednesday morning in search of alleged classified information, according to the newspaper. The reporter, Hannah Natanson, was at her home in Virginia when FBI agents knocked on her door to execute the search warrant, the newspaper reported. Agents seized a phone, 2 laptop computers, one of which was issued to her by the Washington Post, and a Garmin watch, according to the paper. Investigators told her that the warrant was part of an ongoing investigation into Aurelio Perez Lugones, whom an FBI affidavit described as a government contractor, was charged in federal court in Maryland last week for alleged unlawful retention of national defense information, according to an affidavit. That was all from NBC News. President Trump referenced this as he opened up his White House news conference.
Another piece of information that I think is very important is the leaker has been found and is in jail right now. And that's the leaker on Venezuela. And a very bad leaker. So there could be some others, and we'll let you know about that. We're hot on their trail. But the leaker has been found, and the leaker's in jail. And will probably be in jail for a long time. Let's see what happens. So we'll let you know. We'll keep you apprised as to what's going to happen with that.
President Trump at the White House. NBC News writes that Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio hosted the foreign ministers of Denmark and Greenland today, amid President Donald Trump's efforts to take over the vast semi-autonomous Danish territory. The Danish Foreign Minister said the two sides have a fundamental disagreement, but we also agree to disagree, and therefore we will, however, continue to talk. Reporting from NBC News. The foreign ministers held a news conference outside the Danish embassy in Washington. Here is Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen.
Greenland is, through the Kingdom of Denmark, a member of NATO and has been that since the very founding of NATO in 1949 and is therefore also covered by Article 5. We have been pushing for quite a while in NATO for a stronger collective role in Greenland together with a number of allies, and we are eager to work with the US on advancing this agenda, and we are prepared to go further. Therefore, our aim was to find a common understanding on all these points and to launch, if possible, further in-depth work to deliver on them. On this basis, we had what I will describe as a frank but also constructive discussion. The discussions focused on how to ensure the long-term security in Greenland. And here our perspectives continue to differ, I must say. The President has made his view clear, and we have a different position. We, the Kingdom of Denmark, continue to believe that also the long-term security of Greenland can be ensured inside the current framework, the 1951 agreement on the defense of Greenland, as well as the NATO treaty. For us, ideas that would not respect territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark and the right of self-determination of the Greenlandic people are, of course, totally unacceptable. And we therefore still have a fundamental disagreement, but we also agree to disagree. And therefore we will, however, continue to talk. We have decided to form a high-level working group to explore if we can find a common way forward.
The Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen at a news conference outside Denmark's embassy in Washington, D.C., joined by Greenland's Foreign Minister Vivian Motzfeldt, who was asked about the White House continued to say that military force is still an option to make President Trump's desire for the U.S. to acquire Greenland a reality.
You say you have had a constructive meeting. You said in Greenlandic, I could hear the translation, it was a good meeting. But how do you feel about going out of that room without the threat being off the table? So we still have the American administration that wants to have Greenland being part of the United States. And you say, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, that, well, we hope that we can find a way. But how do you actually feel? It can't be very sort of securing, is it?
Vivian?
I think that it's never been so important to initiate that we are allies, we are friends, we have been cooperated in many years, we have history together, so it's all our interest to find the right balances. So I don't think I can say it longer than that. Of course, we have work to do in the future, and for us the most important is that you find the normalized relationship we used to have, and it's very important. And I think that we have initiated so many times where we stand and our geopolitical and location and everything that is very important, and we do it as an ally, and we do it. Of course, it's also our interest that Greenland's positions and how we do it, that you do it on behalf of the allies. And yes.
Greenland Foreign Minister Vivian Motzfeldt at a news conference with the Danish Foreign Minister after they met today in Washington with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. President Trump posted on Truth Social this morning, NATO becomes far more formidable and effective with Greenland in the hands of the United States. Anything less than that is unacceptable. Later at the White House, a reporter asked President Trump about today's meeting.
On NATO, right now it sounds like you are saying that you would potentially acquire Greenland by force. That would be a NATO country. The United. Are you saying that? Would you do that?
No, you're saying that.
Would you
I didn't say it. No, you're telling me that that's what I'm going to do. You don't know what I'm going to do.
So what are the options?
Your network doesn't know either.
The Danish Foreign Minister said that there's still fundamental differences after the meeting with Rubio and with the Vice President. Are you willing to leave the NATO alliance in order to get what you want with Greenland? What are the options right now?
Well, I wouldn't be telling you what I'm willing to do, certainly. I'm not going to give up options, but it's very important. Greenland's very important for the national security, including of Denmark. And the problem is not a thing that Denmark can do about it if Russia or China wants to occupy Greenland. But there's everything we can do. You found that out last week with Venezuela. There's everything we can do about things such as that. Not going to happen. We're not, I can't rely on Denmark being able to fend themselves off. They were talking about they put an extra dog, and they were serious about this. They put an extra dog sled there last month. They added a second dog sled. That's not going to do the trick.
Denmark fought alongside the United States in both Afghanistan
Thank you
and
for telling me
Iraq.
that. I appreciate it.
But
I have a very good relationship with Denmark, and we'll see how it all works out. I think something will work out. Yeah,
President Donald Trump holding a news conference in the White House Oval Office. On Capitol Hill, Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, chair of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, spoke on the Senate floor about Greenland, NATO, the United States, and President Trump's positions.
This is about more than Greenland. It's about more than America's relationship with its highly capable Nordic allies. It's about whether the United States intends to face a constellation of strategic adversaries with capable friends or commit an unprecedented act of strategic self-harm to choose to go it alone. So let's make no mistake. All of the good progress the president has made in pushing allies to spend more on defense, the increased burden sharing, the demand for American-made capabilities, all of it would be for nothing if his administration's ill-advised threats about Greenland were to shatter the trust of our allies. Following through on its provocation would be more disastrous for the president's legacy than withdrawing from Afghanistan was for his predecessor. So, Mr. President, the American people know this. Just 17% think trying to take control of Greenland is a good idea. Only 17% think us taking Greenland is a good idea. Instead, they understand intuitively that strong alliances make America more secure.
Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, speaking on the Senate floor today. And this is Washington Today. Turning to Iran, Associated Press writing some personnel at a key U.S. military base in Qatar were advised to evacuate by Wednesday evening, according to a U.S. official and the Gulf country, as President Donald Trump has warned of possible action after a deadly crackdown on protesters in Iran. The decision came as a senior official in Tehran brought up the country's retaliatory attack in June at Al Udeid Air Base outside Doha, Qatar. Iran's judiciary had signaled Wednesday there would be fast trials and executions ahead for suspects detained in nationwide protests, despite warnings from President Trump that the U.S. may take military action over the killing of peaceful demonstrators. That article from Associated Press, back to President Trump in the White House Oval Office. He made an announcement.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping. It's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that a good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset, including you will be very upset. But that's just gotten to me, some information that the killing has stopped, that the executions have stopped. They're not going to have an execution, which a lot of people were talking about for the last couple of days. Today was going to be the day of execution.
President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office, he made that announcement at the start of the event. It was on a completely different subject. After that was finished, he did take some questions from reporters, and some of them did return to the issue of Iran.
Ron, you said that the killing has stopped. Who told you that the killings have stopped there?
We have been informed by very important sources on the other side, and they've said the killing has stopped and the executions won't take place. There was supposed to be a lot of executions today, and that the executions won't take place. And we're going to find out. I mean, I'll find out after this. You'll find out. But we've been told on good authority, and I hope it's true. Who knows, right? Who knows?
We've
Crazy
seen the body
world.
bags, so how do you trust
No,
them?
you've seen that over the last few days, and they said people were shooting at them with guns, and they were shooting back, and it's one of those things. But they told me that there'll be no executions, and so I hope that's true.
Does this mean military action is now off the table against Iran?
We're going to watch and see what the process is, but we were given a very good statement by people that are aware of what's going on.
But are they considering military action?
I mean, when they say no executions, everyone is talking about a lot of executions were taking place today. We were just told no executions. I hope that's true. That's a big thing, yes.
President Donald Trump holding the news conference in the White House Oval Office. CNN writing about Iran. The foreign ministers of the group of 7 nations warned of additional restrictive measures if Iran does not cease its brutal crackdown on dissent. In a joint statement Wednesday, the foreign ministers of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Britain, and the United States condemned Iranian authorities' quote, brutal repression of the Iranian people and their use of violence, killing, and arbitrary arrests to suppress protests. The countries called on Iranian authorities to exercise restraint and refrain from violence. That was from CNN. Foreign policy also coming up today in the House, which is considering a $76.3 billion package of some of the remaining fiscal year 2027 spending bills that would prevent a government shutdown at the end of January if they're signed into law. Today's package has the financial services and general government and national security and State Department appropriations. Congressman Eli Crane, Republican of Arizona, offered an amendment to eliminate the National Endowment for Democracy funding. You'll hear him followed by an opponent of this proposal, Congresswoman Lois Frankel, Democrat of Florida.
I rise today in support of my amendment to defund the National Endowment of Democracy, Although its name suggests a force for good, its mission has drifted far from its Cold War origins. This is a classic tactic of the swamp where bad policy and corruption hide behind a noble title. I want to thank Mr. Mike Benz and other patriots. We've learned that this organization has engaged in global censorship, domestic propaganda, and regime change politics. It has worked to crush populist movements, fuel color revolutions, and run off-the-books operations with plausible deniability. The Trump administration attempted to defund it earlier this year, but that was reversed because Congress had previously approved it. Now is our chance to change that. I urge my colleagues to prevent taxpayer resources from funding this rogue organization that works against our nation's interests. With that, I reserve.
Reserves his time. The gentlewoman from Florida, for what purpose does the gentlewoman rise?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I claim time in strong opposition to this amendment.
A woman from Florida will be recognized in opposition for 5 minutes. Gentlewoman's recognized.
I speak again today as the mother of a son, a United States Marine veteran who came home from 2 wars. One lesson I carry with me is this: the conflicts that put our sons and our daughters in harm's way almost always arise in places where democracy has failed or never taken root. This amendment would strike funding for the National Endowment for Democracy and core democracy provisions in the bill, and this would be a serious mistake and a dangerous retreat from American values. For decades, these programs have supported free and fair elections, independent journalism, civic participation, and access to truthful information, tools that help societies resolve disputes without violence. In Ukraine, democracy programs help document Russian war crimes against women and children. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, they fight corruption and strengthen the rule of law. In Pakistan, they promote religious tolerance and protect minority communities. And around the world, they expand women's participation in political life, one of the strongest predictors of long-term stability. These investments are not charity, they're prevention. They save American lives, taxpayer dollars, and future troop deployments by reducing the likelihood of conflict, extremism, and mass displacement that ultimately demand United States intervention. From the streets of Iran to fragile democracies under pressure, brave people are risking everything for dignity, for freedom, and a voice in their future. These are the people that these programs support. I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment and stand up for democracy and for American leadership around the world.
On the House floor, Congresswoman Lois Frankel, Democrat from Florida, responding to the amendment offered by Congressman Eli Crane, Republican from Arizona. And the House went on to defeat this amendment, 127 in favor, 291 opposed, 81 House Republicans joining all Democrats in voting no. The National Endowment for Democracy 2024 annual report has this line: in 2024, the endowment made over 1,900 grants across 91 countries, totaling $286 million, demonstrating our ability to deliver powerful, targeted support where it's needed most, so that every dollar we invest is maximizing impact. Another amendment offered to the fiscal year 2027 spending bill package in the House today concerned funding federal judges, and in light of their rulings the past year on the Trump administration policies, especially immigration-related. The amendment came from Congressman Chip Roy, Republican of Texas. You'll hear opposition from Congressman Steny Hoyer, Democrat of Maryland.
That amendment is dealing with what we call general government, that portion of funding that deals with a number of areas, including our judges, including how judges are funded. And one of the issues that we've been addressing is the extent to which the president, who is elected to fulfill a mandate, has been carrying out policies that he believes fulfills the mandate the American people gave the president, and that members and my colleagues on this side of the aisle believe should be fulfilled. And yet there have been judges who have been putting their personal preferences and their activist tendencies in front of the will of the people and in front of the policies that the president is putting forward in such a way that raises questions about whether they're carrying out their jobs responsibly and in accordance with normal judicial ethics and procedures. Therefore, I offer this amendment that would reduce the budget of the district court, the DC District Court and DC Circuit Court, by 20% and would take away the staff funding for Judges Boardman and Judges Boasberg, because these two individuals have been particularly egregious in their contempt of the president and putting their personal views in front of their duty as judges to carry out the jobs that they hold. And I will now reserve my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The distinguished gentleman from Maryland has claimed his opposition and is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for recognizing me. I presume this is a message amendment. I presume that because I know that the gentleman who offered it is bright, knowledgeable, and knows this amendment is clearly unconstitutional. I'm sure he's read the Constitution. He talks about it from time to time. And of course, the language of the Constitution is very clear. For exactly the reason that the founders did not want us to be able to monetarily penalize them for judgments with which we disagreed. Because they wanted an independent judiciary, a nation of laws, not of men, a nation of laws that are not compromised by threats of cutting salaries, changing lifestyles, so that the judiciary would be unlike England, who had a king who made the laws, that it would be the Parliament and the courts. So I would suggest that we withdraw this amendment, with all due respect to my friend from Texas, because surely he would not want to go against the Constitution of the United States of America.
Congressman Steny Hoyer, Democrat from Maryland, and Congressman Chip Roy, Republican from Texas, on the House floor. The final vote on this amendment was 163 in favor, 257 opposed, and 1 voting present. President Donald Trump said Tuesday in his Detroit Economic Club speech that starting February 1st, he's going to deny federal funding to any states that have local governments not following his administration's immigration policies, the so-called sanctuary city areas. Axios reporting today over 50 House Democrats have signed on to co-sponsor articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. And that is roughly a quarter of the House Democratic caucus. Axios says it's a far cry from the party's out-of-hand dismissal of every other impeachment effort that has cropped up thus far during President Trump's second term. The articles were introduced by Congresswoman Robin Kelly, Democrat from Illinois, who spoke today at a news conference.
Secretary Noem has brought her reign of terror to the Chicagoland area, L.A., New Orleans, Charlotte, Durham, and communities north to south to east to west. You'll hear from some of those communities, Minnesota and Portland. She needs to be held accountable for her actions. This is why I introduced 3 articles of impeachment against Secretary Noem. Number 1, obstruction of Congress. Secretary Noem has denied me and other members of Congress oversight of ICE detention facilities. I was denied access to the ICE facility in Broadview despite following Secretary Noem's unlawful 7-day notice requirement. It is our constitutional duty to find out what's happening in these centers where inhumane conditions continue to be reported. Number 2, violation of public trust. Secretary Noem directed DHS agents to arrest people without warrants, use tear gas against citizens, and ignore due process. She claims she's taking murderers and rapists off our streets, but none of the 614 people arrested during Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago have been charged or convicted of murder or rape. Federal agents repelled from Black Hawk helicopters and burst through an apartment in the South Shore of Chicago. That was in my district. They dragged people, U.S. citizens and immigrants alike, out of bed in the middle of the night. Number 3 is self-dealing. Secretary Noem has abused her power for personal benefit. She steered a federal contract to a new firm run by a friend. Her propaganda campaign to recruit ICE agents cost taxpayers $200 million. She made a video that turned the South Shore raid into something that looked like a movie trailer. But make no mistake, this is not a movie. This is real life, and real people are being hurt and killed. Renee Nicole Good is dead because Secretary Noem allowed her DHS agents to run amok. Families are forever torn apart. This is not about personalities or trivial disagreements. Secretary Noem has called my impeachment efforts silly. I want to tell her right now, Secretary Noem, you have violated your oath of office, and there will be consequences.
Congresswoman Robin Kelly, Democrat from Illinois, at a news conference today in Washington. Associated Press writing, the State Department said Wednesday it will suspend the processing of immigrant visas for citizens of 75 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Russia, and Somalia, whose nationals the Trump administration has deemed likely to require public assistance while living in the United States. The State Department, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, said it had instructed consular officers to halt immigrant visa applications from the countries affected in accordance with a broader order issued in November that tighten rules around potential immigrants who might become public charges in the U.S. That was from Associated Press. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea. It's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. President Donald Trump signed into law a bipartisan bill to allow schools in the U.S. to have whole milk and 2% fat milk in their school lunches, reversing a restriction dating back to the Barack Obama administration that required fat-free or low-fat milk. USA Today writing about it, under the new law, schools participating in the National School Lunch Program, which provides meals for nearly 30 million students, including 21 million at free or reduced prices, can offer students whole 2% milk or non-dairy beverages that are nutritionally equivalent to milk, in addition to reduced fat and fat-free milk. President Trump's signature comes after Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on January 7th released new dietary guidelines that flip the traditional food pyramid to emphasize full-fat dairy, protein, and healthy fats. That was from USA Today. Here's President Trump signing the law in the White House Oval Office.
As it currently stands, schools participating in the National School Lunch Program are only able to offer students low or non-fat milk options. That was changed during the Obama administration, and a lot of people disagreed with it at the time. With this legislation, schools will finally be able to expand their offerings to include nutritious whole milk. It's actually a legal definition, whole milk. And it's whole with a W, for those of you that have a problem. Most of the media will get that. This is the perfect follow-up to the new real food pyramid, and Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Rollins announced that last week. You probably heard. This legislation also allows parents to directly request a substitute for milk for children with dairy intolerance. Previously, parents were required to submit a written statement from a doctor, but we're eliminating that rather ridiculous policy, allowing parents to choose what is best for their child, which is a big move. Hard to believe that that would be a big thing, but it is. And of course, these changes will be major victories for the American dairy farmers, who we love and who voted for me in great numbers, I will say. I think I got every one of them.
President Trump in the White House Oval Office. Story from Notice. The House Committee on Administration on Wednesday advanced a Republican-backed congressional stock ban bill to the full House of Representatives, which has been host to many violations of existing stock trade laws and the subject of concern that some federal lawmakers' personal finances conflict with their public service. Dubbed the Stop Insider Trading Act, the bill bans lawmakers and their immediate family members from trading individual stocks and requires them to file a public notice at least a week ahead of selling any existing stock holdings. Violators would be subject to a fine of $2,000 or 10% of the value of the transaction in the covered investment, whichever is greater, and forfeit any net gains. That was the article from Notice. Here is part of the markup. Congressman Brian Stile, Republican from Wisconsin, chairs the House Administration Committee.
We're here today because no member of Congress, regardless of party or seniority, should be profiting off of insider information. If you want to trade stocks, go to Wall Street. Here on Capitol Hill, we're working for the American people. There's a lot of talk in this town about draining the swamp and cleaning up Washington. Well, today, the rubber hits the road. Good governance matters, and the Committee on House Administration is leading the charge. Let's step back and look at how we got here. The Stock Act of 2012 prohibits public officials from using non-public information for their own financial benefit. It's a good start, but time has shown that more needs to be done. Social media accounts have garnered significant attention for documenting lawmakers' stock trades. Some may be shocked to hear that at times the reporting has been sensationalized and outright untrue. However, there are documented instances that raise very real red flags. A number of bills have been introduced to strengthen the existing rules, but to date, none have been called up in committee or seen floor action. The product we have today is the result of months of work with our colleagues, and I believe we're in a position to pass it.
Congressman Brian Stile, Republican from Wisconsin, House Administration Committee chair at today's markup. The committee's ranking member, Joe Morelli, Democrat of New York, said the bill introduced by the Republicans does not go far enough.
Under this bill, the wealthiest members of Congress can keep every single share of stock they currently own and use their dividends to buy even more stock. Under this bill, members can liquidate their holdings at any time while in office, profiting off years of ballooning investment portfolios. Under this bill, spouses of members can trade freely, buy or sell on behalf or for the benefit of any person other than themselves, their spouse, or the dependent children. I call this the grandma loophole, because this loophole allows spouses or dependent children of members to trade on behalf of grandparents or parents, their siblings. A member's spouse could freely trade stocks on behalf of their parents or grandparents with the member of Congress in line to inherit the estate. This is a loophole so big you could fly a Qatari jet right through it. The bill does nothing to crack down on the self-dealing currently in progress at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The president continues to trade securities for his own enrichment, including the recent purchase of up to $1 million in Warner Brothers bonds, all while Warner Brothers is in the middle of merger talks that will need the approval of President Trump's FCC. The bill does nothing to stop judges and justices from trading stocks in companies who have cases before them in court. The Stop Insider Trading Act falls far, far too short. I wouldn't even call this a half measure. It's a misdirection play. Because of that, because I believe this bill is simply Speaker Johnson's attempt to blunt momentum toward a full congressional stock trading ban, I plan on opposing the bill today.
Congressman Joseph Morelli, Democrat from New York, House Administration Committee ranking member at today's markup. The Democrats did offer a number of amendments. They were all voted down. Then the committee approved the bill on a party line vote, 7-4, sending it to the full House. And today's markup comes after Republican House member Anna Paulina Luna of Florida had threatened to file a discharge petition to force action on the House floor on this issue, going around Speaker Johnson's ability to schedule votes. Wall Street today, the Dow down 42, NASDAQ down 238, S&P down 37. NBC News writing that China had its biggest trade surplus ever last year at almost $1.2 trillion, according to data released Wednesday, defying tariffs President Donald Trump has imposed on the world's second largest economy. China is sending more exports to other parts of the world, even as it struggles with domestic economic troubles, reporting from NBC News. The U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, also known as HELP, held a hearing today on mifepristone, one of the 2 abortion drugs approved by the Food and Drug Administration. The Hill writing about it, the Supreme Court in 2024 upheld access to mifepristone. The Trump administration has vowed to review the drug's approval. The FDA in October approved a new generic form of the abortion drug, drawing upset from conservative voices. That was from The Hill. During today's hearing, Senator John Husted, Republican of Ohio, spoke about reversing the FDA's 2021 decision allowing mifepristone to be obtained through mail order instead of requiring an in-person visit to the doctor.
Admittedly, in preparation for today's hearing, I had a lot of reflection about my start in life. I started out in foster care and was adopted, and know that my birth mother was under a lot of pressure to have an abortion. And thankfully for me, she didn't. I know that my biological father had pressured her to do so, and she chose an adoption. So I fast forward and think about the world we live in today with drugs like mifepristone and wonder, if it had existed then, would the outcome for me have been different? I would like to think that my birth mother would have still chosen to have an adoption, but I've seen some of the horrors of men who are trying to use the drug to end pregnancies against the will of the woman that they give the drug to. And I'm going to go through a couple of examples to prove that this is a real-life situation. Example 1, according to a criminal complaint filed in the U.S. District Court in the Southern District of Texas, Christopher Cooperrider murdered his next-door neighbor's unborn child, who he fathered in 2025. Cooperrider obtained mifepristone via online pharmacy and gave her these drugs without her knowledge by lacing it in her hot chocolate. Example 2 from my own state of Ohio. According to the Ohio State Medical Board, Hassan James Abbas obtained mifepristone and misoprostol via an out-of-state telemedicine provider by providing the telemedicine platform in the name of his estranged wife. Mr. Abbas allegedly obtained the prescription of mifepristone with the intent to secretly terminate the pregnancy of a woman with whom he had engaged in a sexual relationship. Public reporting alleges that Mr. Abbas spiked the beverage with the abortion drug without the woman's knowledge, and she didn't consume the beverage. And then later, Mr. Abbas waited until she was asleep, held the woman down, and forced her to consume the drug. That's not the choice of a woman.
Senator John Husted, Republican from Ohio, at today's Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee hearing on the abortion drug mifepristone. Senator Maggie Hassan, Democrat from New Hampshire, opposed the idea of ending the ability to get that drug through mail order.
This hearing has just struck me as gaslighting at the highest level. I have some questions for Dr. Verma. I'm going to get to them in just a second, but let me be clear. There is bipartisan work that we have all done together to combat sex trafficking. Those signs you saw in Southwest Airlines plane, that's because we passed a law that said they have to go up in airports and on planes. That was bipartisan work we all did. The truth of the matter is that women have been coerced before mifepristone, and they've been coerced since mifepristone. The murder rate, the assault rate on pregnant women by their partners to end a pregnancy has been a long-standing part of human history. So to blame it on mifepristone misses the point. To say that women shouldn't be able to get this medication through the mail misses the point that abortion bans have created maternal health and reproductive health deserts in this country, so that when you say a woman should go consult with a physician, there are women who would have to travel hours in this country, miss work, find a babysitter, if they have a car to begin with, in order to do that because of policies that have banned abortion and have cut Medicaid in particular. That's what we are facing.
Senator Maggie Hassan, Democrat from New Hampshire, at today's Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee hearing. You can find the full hearing at our video library at cspan.org. One of the witnesses today, Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill, a Republican, testified that her state is seeking extradition of a physician out of the San Francisco, California area to face charges of illegally mailing abortion medication to Louisiana. Murrill said, "This is not health care, it's drug dealing." From ABC News, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer said on Wednesday the panel plans to move forward with contempt of Congress proceedings against former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton after she defied a subpoena for a deposition as part of the panel's probe into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It comes a day after Comer, a Republican, said the committee plans to hold former President Bill Clinton in contempt of Congress as well after he refused to appear for a scheduled deposition. Comer said the committee will vote next Wednesday on holding the Clintons in contempt of Congress. That was from ABC News. Here is Congressman Comer speaking to reporters in the hallway.
Well, here we are again. I don't think it's any secret. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton joined her husband in defying a bipartisan lawful congressional subpoena to show up today. I think what's most disappointing to the Oversight Committee is the fact that we have, in good faith, negotiated with the Clintons' attorneys for 5 months. Throughout the past 5 months, they've implied to us they were trying to make a date work. In fact, the last date we had, they notified us 3 days beforehand, said that they would love to come, but they have a funeral to attend. And we have bent over backwards to try to schedule the Clinton. No, I'm still talking. I'm still talking. Go ahead. Hey, get him out of here. You're not even a reporter. Get out of here. So here's the situation. We're going to hold both Clintons in criminal contempt of Congress. We believe that because this subpoena was issued in a bipartisan fashion, the Democrats acted the day that the subpoenas were voted on in the subcommittee like they wanted the Clintons to come because they at that time, if you go back, they were wanting me to subpoena the estate, which I did. We subpoenaed the estate and got all the documents, everything. That was what the victims asked. That's what the Democrats asked. I think that's what the American people wanted. We subpoenaed the estate, got 100% of the documents. I have subpoenaed the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi for the documents, which they are producing. Now, we don't like the speed. We all wish the documents would come in quicker, but we've gotten tens of thousands of pages of documents from the Department of Justice. And remember, they made a big document drop, and the Democrats cried foul because they said they didn't.
Demanded redactions.
Right, they wanted more redactions. So they're double and triple checking this. And the Department of Justice is complying with our lawful subpoena. The estate complied with our lawful subpoena. Bill Barr, Alex Acosta came in and were deposed because of our lawful subpoena. This same lawful subpoena was issued to the Clintons, and they defied it. And you know, Bill Clinton's trying to play the victim card here. Only Bill Clinton could try to triangulate something that's happened, a terrible atrocity to these survivors that have had to endure who knows what from Epstein and Maxwell.
And their associates.
So we're trying to get answers to the American people. We're serious about it. Once again, not a single Democrat showed up. You know how many depositions we've done? There's always a Democrat here. The former President of the United States, former Secretary of State, neither one of them, not a single Democrat here.
House Oversight and Reform Committee Chair James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, meeting with reporters, other Republican members of the committee standing beside him. Bill and Hillary Clinton sent a letter to Chair Comer on Tuesday calling the demand that they testify in person in this Jeffrey Epstein investigation partisan politics. The committee's ranking member, Robert Garcia, Democrat from California, was on CNN Tuesday night discussing the delayed release of the federal government's files on the Jeffrey Epstein cases.
Donald Trump continues to lead a White House cover-up of the Epstein files. Why has it been weeks now, that the date has passed where all the files should have been released to the Congress and to the public? We have received 1% of the files. That is criminal. It's illegal. What is Pam Bondi and Donald Trump hiding? Why do we continue to protect these powerful men that raped and abused children and women? So it's incredibly concerning. Why are we doing this? And it's really concerning, especially that of what they've released, you're seeing redactions that are, as we know, sometimes are including the president and other co-conspirators. We're seeing some of the survivors' names actually be released. We're supposed to be protecting the survivors and their names. And so it's all concerning. Actions need to be taken. There's obviously a legal route that some folks are exploring, and contempt charges as well. All of that, I think, is on the table.
Congressman Robert Garcia, Democrat of California, ranking member on the Oversight Committee on CNN Tuesday night. New York Post writing, a bipartisan pair of lawmakers asked a Manhattan federal judge Tuesday to compel the prompt release of all investigative materials on deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein after the Department of Justice acknowledged last week it had yet to release 99% of documents related to the case. Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, and Congressman Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, requested U.S. District Judge Paul Engelmeyer to appoint a special master to oversee the release in compliance with their bill, which President Trump signed into law on November 19th, ordering the disclosures. That was from the New York Post. And Politico writing that California Attorney General Rob Bonta is investigating Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company, XAI, over the proliferation of non-consensual sexualized images. The State Department of Justice announced Wednesday. The move comes amid growing outrage over AI-edited images of women and girls generated by the company's chatbot, Grok. Governor Gavin Newsom threw his support behind Bonta's investigation into the tech giant, posting on Musk's social media company X that XAI's decision to create and host a breeding ground for predators to spread non-consensual, sexually explicit AI deepfakes, including images that digitally undress children, is vile. I am calling on the Attorney General to immediately investigate the company. That was from Politico. There has been an ongoing investigation about this in Great Britain, where online regulator Office of Communications, or Ofcom, has threatened to ban X completely from that country. There was an update today during Prime Minister's question time in the British House of Commons in London. Questions to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If reports are correct, Elon Musk has climbed down today under pressure from this government. And let's be clear, stripping women naked without consent in real life or online is abuse. But we don't know whether to trust what X is saying today, and this isn't just happening on X. So will the Prime Minister join me and men and women across this House and our nation to say to any app and to any AI company that we will not tolerate and we will enforce any abuse of men, women, or children in this country?
Can I thank you for raising this? The actions of Grok and X are disgusting and they're shameful. And frankly, the decision to then turn this into a premium service is horrific. And we're absolutely determined to take action here. We've made it clear that X has to act, and if not, Ofcom has our full backing and will introduce and are introducing legislation. Mr. Speaker, to update the House, I have been informed this morning that X is acting to ensure full compliance with UK law. If so, that is welcome, but we're not going to back down. They must act. We will take the necessary measures. We will strengthen existing laws and prepare for legislation if it needs to go further. And Ofcom will continue its independent investigation.
As someone with a personal experience of AI-generated images, the recent AI images shared on X, particularly those of children, sickens me. Yet, the leader of Reform continues to defend Elon Musk. Anyone who defends platforms linked to sexual exploitation of children forfeits any right to give lectures about protecting women and girls. What will the Prime Minister do to stop any political party from putting tech billionaires ahead of protecting our children?
Can I thank her for raising this? And it's astonishing that Reform defend Musk on this issue. It is complete. I said the images are disgusting. Their position is disgusting on this. This is weaponising images of women and children that should never be made. And that's why we're acting. Reform refused to do anything about it. But more than that, the point she raises, they would scrap the Online Safety Act that stops children accessing content like pornography, suicide, self-harm and eating disorders. They're an absolute disgrace and know nothing about protecting children.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, head of the Labour Party, during Prime Minister's Question Time in the British House of Commons in London today. Politico Europe writing that Elon Musk has denied that X's artificial intelligence tool Grok generates illegal content in the wake of AI-generated undressed and sexualized images on the platform. In a fresh post Wednesday, X's powerful owner sought to argue that users, not the AI tool, are responsible and that the platform is fully compliant with all laws. He said, "I'm not aware of any naked underage images generated by Grok." Literally zero. That was from Politico Europe. And finally, on C-SPAN Radio's Washington Today, Associated Press reporting that Claudette Colvin, whose 1955 arrest for refusing to give up her seat on a segregated Montgomery, Alabama bus helped spark the modern civil rights movement, has died. She was 86. Colvin was arrested months before Rosa Parks gained international fame before refusing to give up her seat on a segregated bus. That was from AP. In 2023 on C-SPAN 2's Book TV, Maddie Kahn, author of Young and Restless, The Girls Who Sparked America's Revolutions, spoke about Claudette Colvin.
A lot of people now know her as the first person to do what she did on a bus. Fewer people know her much more important role in history, which is that after she was kind of dismissed by the movement came looking for her again because they needed plaintiffs in a case that became known as Browder v. Gale, which is the case that ultimately ruled segregation on buses to be unconstitutional and ended the Montgomery bus boycott that Rosa Parks started. And they tried to find every kind of upstanding man possible, and none wanted to do the job. So in the end, it was 4 women, 2 teenage girls, including Claudette, and with a newborn son at home and every reason possible to say no, she testified in court. And her testimony really won the day. They saved her for last. They found her to be, again, the most emotional, the most persuasive, the best emissary for the movement. And she did it. And after she did it, when there should have been, parade in her honor and every person calling her to thank her, no one told her what the results of the case were, and no one called. I never wanted to tell a story that made it seem like everything is a happy ending for the girls who do this, and Claudette waited a long time to get credit, and I think even the credit we give her now is partial, and the way we understand her relationship with the movement is inadequate. But I have a lot of admiration for people who decided, even when it wasn't going to benefit them, that there was just something they just had to do.
Author Maddie Kahn at the Harvard Bookstore in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 2023 on C-SPAN 2's Book TV, that from C-SPAN's video library. Claudette Colvin has died at the age of 86. Maddie Kahn, the author of Young and Restless, The Girls Who Sparked America's Revolutions. Congresswoman Terry Sewell, Democrat from Alabama, writing on X about the death of Claudette Colvin. Our nation has lost a true civil rights champion. Her story is often overlooked, yet her quiet courage paved the way for generations to claim their rightful place in our democracy. My prayers are with Ms. Colvin's family and loved ones. May we honor her legacy by continuing the fight for justice and equality. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. For the latest on what's been going on in Washington, sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word at cspan.org. Have a good night.